Hello, everybody. Got some
Hi
activity
there.
going on in the chat here. I love that everyone is coming in from all over the world. It's interesting. With South Africa, we got the Philippines, Peru. Yeah, drop where you're from: Arizona, Kentucky, New York. I mean, we got a nice crowd here. But I'm excited. My name is Jack Fan. I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at AirDeck. And today we're excited to have Tejas. How do you pronounce your last name, Tejas?
It's Meta,
Meta.
MEHTA. Yep.
Yes. I should have asked you that prior, right?
So easy.
And then Melissa Smith of Marketing Eye. But first, before we jump into this, I kind of just want to go over kind of the outline. Feel free to drop questions into the chat. There's also an Ask a Questions link there. You can throw a question there, and we'll try to get to those questions. There's just keep active, talk to each other. Feel free to chime in anytime you want. But what I'm, hoping to do here is just kind of bring some value. I know we have a large marketing agency audience here, as well as several others from all over the world. So excited to have everyone here. So first up, a little bit myself. Let's see. How do I share the screens here? I thought I had it. It's not sharing. I apologize. Okay. Yay, fun parts. It says it can't be shared. Okay. But yes.
Technology never works when you want it.
Technology does not work when it wants to. This is a fun part. So I am Jack Fan. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at AirDeck. What I'm doing is I'm helping users to discover how AirDeck can transform the way we communicate and deliver documents in a virtual environment. So I'm currently leading the brand and marketing here at AirDeck. For those of you who maybe follow me on Twitter, I also have a large following there where I share just random thoughts around technology, entrepreneurship, startups, and space, and of course K-pop. If any K-pop fans are out there, Twice Comeback is coming soon. So that's kind of my background. Tejas, could you introduce yourself and give yourself an introduction?
Absolutely. I'm the co-founder of Social Pilot. Social Pilot is a social media automation tool. There are tons of tools in the market, but all of these tools were built for different audiences. There were tools built for freelancers and SMBs, and then there are tools built for enterprises. We built Social Pilot as a tool for agencies so that they can kind of take care of social media marketing automation. Prior to Social Pilot, I used to work with consulting and advisory firm and work with financial sector clients. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm a big fan of technology. I'm sad that this is not working out, Jack, the sharing of slides, but we'll try it out next time.
Yes, thank you. And I think I may figure it out here, but it's still not the best. Here we go. Give me 5, 4. I love technology, don't you?
I do too. It never works when I want it to.
Right. Okay. Wait a minute. I think it's happening. I think it's actually happening. Hey, look at that.
Yay.
Figured it out. Awesome.
We're in business.
Awesome. There we go. So that's everything Tejas has just said, but so you live in Kentucky, which is, he doesn't drink, but it is my favorite city for whiskey and bourbon. So
yeah.
Awesome.
And Melissa, hey, look, there's a slide for you.
There he is. I don't look the same at 3 a.m. in the morning, but I'm in Sydney, Australia, for everyone that doesn't recognize my accent and thinks I'm from New Zealand or England. So I've been in marketing agencies or advertising agencies for the past 30 years. So my very first job was in a small boutique advertising agency that looked after a very big client called Nissan, which I think everyone's familiar with. When I was 25 years of age, I started my very first agency. So that was 23 years ago, called Insomnia. And I built that up very fast in the technology and biotech sector. And then, of course, as we know, the tech industry crashed. And I decided to think a little bit smarter, and I started another agency called Marketing Eye, which is an outsourced marketing department or marketing team agency, which is in Australia, the Netherlands, and the US. And out of a problem with running advertising and marketing agencies in relation to developing marketing strategies and just putting in better processes within an organisation, I built a technology using artificial intelligence and machine learning to automate the development of a marketing strategy. So we can develop a marketing strategy that is 50 to 60 pages in length in less than 20 minutes using technology. So that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing, amazing. So we are so honored to have you join us today for this webinar and really sharing some of those insights that you have. You know, Melissa and I are part of Adobe's insider group as well, and which is, you know, helping to share the exciting things that are happening over at Adobe. So that's how we met initially, but it's a great community, and the marketing value that we are able to share with each other is just invaluable. And hopefully we'll be able to share some of these things with you here today as well. Okay, there we go. Back to our normal selves. So, you know, tell me a little bit about some kind of the beginnings of your agency, Melissa. Kind of, you know, how did you acquire that first customer?
Yeah, what was really interesting is I was in the corporate world and I was 25 years of age. I was a decent writer, to be honest, and I was still learning marketing. And, you know, 30 years later, I'm still learning marketing. So it's very much like that as a career. And a company knocked on my door and they said, Melissa, you're really good at marketing. How about you start an agency and I'll be your first customer? Now, not everyone gets that dream first customer, but if you're a freelancer or you're thinking about starting a business, it's always good to start a business with your first client. So before you make that big jump, to actually go out and to sort of see the appetite for you running an agency and the trust that you can get from a potential client to be able to help fund that early stage.
Yeah, that's I think some of the challenges where a lot of people is finding that first customer. And some of those agencies I know, even my own, I have an agency on the side as well, came out of a need, right? Necessity of a connection that someone says, I need this help, and you bring some expertise. Tejas, obviously with Social Pilot, how did you go about acquiring kind of your first customer?
So interestingly, as Melissa mentioned, right, have your first customer and then build the product. Our first customer was our agency itself. So my co-founder Jimit, he was running his own agency, and he realized that social media marketing is a problem. So he kind of became his own first customer and created a product for himself. And then he realized that the same product is needed by other agencies as well. So luckily, first customer internal, but then it kind of really spread with other agencies coming on board as well.
So similar to that, with our first customer, what happened is they told lots of other people and they brought in customers for us. And then the second thing was, I'm in the marketing game. So what do you do when you need to get customers? You do marketing. So I did the cheapest form of marketing at that time, and this is before social media became a thing. And I rang the local newspaper and gave them some thought leadership. Said this is where the industry is heading. This is why it's, the technology industry is booming, and this is how marketers need to keep up. And I was 25 years of age, so I was definitely not a thought leader, but I had to use the tools that were in front of me to be able to really get our brand out there. And from that one article, several newspapers and magazines asked me for interviews, mostly because of my age, no doubt. But also what happened is this influx of clients came in. And it was a really good problem to have, but it was a really simple marketing tool to be able to bring in clients from just one marketing medium. And then, as we all know, it's not just one marketing medium that's going to get you clients. You need to be across social media, and you need to be communicating with your customers and your prospects and past customers to be able to really build that community, which I believe AirDeck's really good at.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of leads me on to the next, conversation here, which is you've acquired your first customer, right? And you've realized that you have an ability now to kind of expand your reach, and you can provide the brand and the marketing work for other agencies, but sometimes agencies forget that, we need to take care of ourselves and brand it and advertise ourselves. So how did you go about, transforming a customer that came to you and said, I need to have this done, into I need to attract more customers like that so I can provide these services?
Yeah, the need was there because I had to pay the bills. So in essence, I needed to get customers. And so, as I said, I use PR as my initial medium. This is long before social media became a thing, but and then word of mouth, and then more PR, and then some advertising, and then events, and then keynote speaking. So it was a combination of things. But what was most interesting is when I started Marketing Eye when I was 30 years of age, it was a very different ball game. So social media started to be a thing. Email was definitely a thing. So as I said, I started in the industry 30 years ago. So email wasn't around back then. But what was really interesting, my second company, is it was so much harder to get clients because social media had started and people were starting to, the audience was starting to look at different things. Traditionally they were looking at newspapers and they were looking at magazines and they were looking at television and radio. But all of a sudden they're on Facebook and other mediums like that. And so what was really important is A, to be an early adopter, and B, realizing just how important your website is. I remember when Twitter came on, I joined Twitter quite early in the game, and I found after 12 months that I was literally getting a $24,000 a year customer from Twitter, one per week. And The reason being is I was an early adopter. I may have only had 10 or 20,000 followers, definitely nothing in your magnitude, Jack. And yet I was getting a customer a week. And it's that early adoption and that connection you're able to get when you are an early adopter that really helped. And Marketing Eye literally grew its business from social media and its website. So we did no outbound marketing up until 5 years ago. So, we'd gone more than 10 years without any outbound marketing, just really focusing on content and our website.
That's wonderful. Tejas, we talked about a little bit about, what are some of the things that, marketing agencies can do to attract, more customers. Well, what are your thoughts on, what agencies can do, when it comes to, being visible and being out there on social media, and the tools that could be used to kind of attract those customers?
Yeah. So to Melissa's point, right? Marketing agencies sometimes forget how to market themselves, right? Or they just don't have time because there's so much of work coming in from clients. They want to kind of work on generating those bills for the customers rather than marketing themselves. But what has happened now is that there are tons of marketing agencies coming up every now and then, like freelancers turning into agencies, which is great. But at the same time, then the attention span of people is also decreasing. It's like narrowing. So it's very important to be authentic. If you are on social media, you got to be authentic on social media. If you are blogging, you have to be authentic and kind of really voice what you're trying to achieve, or how you're different in the customer segment, how you're different in terms of targeting, what kind of customers you want to serve. Basically, being authentic and kind of clearing your focus on who you're serving, that is probably the foundation of getting more customers, I believe.
Yeah. On that point, Tejas, what's really important is that authenticity. I remember as we were growing the business from a digital perspective, when I was actually physically writing my own tweets and when I was physically writing my own blogs, honestly, our website from Alexa ranking was down to 9,000. And that was because I was doing everything myself and it was authentic. It was who I was, which really stemmed into who the company was. But as I got too busy, I started to get juniors to come in and write my content, and I didn't check it, and everything became too busy, and we weren't doing it as frequently, and blogs weren't every day anymore. They were every week, and it really changed, and we noticed an enormous dip in the amount of leads that were coming into our business because of it. And also our social media and digital presence really changed to a negative. So it's not only, being authentic, but it's making sure that whoever touches your social media or whoever touches your website really communicates in the same way that your brand needs to be communicated, and that resonates with your target audience.
Yep.
Absolutely.
To that point, Melissa, sorry, Jack.
Go ahead.
We did this exercise internally to understand what is our brand voice. As you rightly said, anybody communicating to the external world, be it customers or be it vendors, etc., there has to be a consistent philosophy, and that needs to reflect in the brand voice. What is the brand archetype, so as to say? A lot of agencies do not really put in efforts to identify this for themselves. And as a result, the consistency and authenticity does not come out. So totally agree with you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I find it interesting too, because a lot of agencies are built around the person that kind of started the agency, kind of their brand presence, right? For myself, I think I had read a book called Known by Mark Schaefer, who talks about personal branding, right? And he's a great author, and talks about how do you build your personal brand. And that's how I built my following on Twitter and kind of who I am today. Is I've had some results. I've founded companies, I've sold those companies, but just having that alone is not enough. I was able to share the knowledge with other people, and over time I understood that if I build a brand around myself that is positive and impactful, that people connect with that, right? And then regardless of what I'm doing, and I've done several things throughout my career, people will connect with me because of the person that I am and the work that I do. Different people will then find that as a point of interest to them, right? And so when I carry over that to a business, I do the exact same thing. I am still me. I am authentically me. Always will be me, right? And so yes, I cheer on twice my the K-pop girls that are out there in the world. I talk about entrepreneurship. I love space. And all these things though still carry on to the work I do, and that is, for example, when I'm talking about businesses that I start, there's always some form of connection, and AirDeck is one of those that I think is super valuable. And I think agencies, when you're going into building an agency, how much of your personal brand do you think should go into the brand of your business?
I think from my perspective, I learned a big lesson in my first company, which still exists today, by the way. But what I learned about that is no one would do business with my agency. Now, this is a similar issue that a lot of freelancers have when they start their own agency, unless I was in the room or as long as I was part of the parcel. So they wouldn't sign up unless they knew that they were getting me. Now, you can't build a business doing that, and you just burn yourself out. And there's no point in having a company that you can't grow. So when I was 30, I did this, outsourced marketing department model, which worked really well, but it took ages to really take off, because I told everyone on our team that they were not to say the company was owned by me, and they were not to use my brand. And I wouldn't use my brand in media in the early days, because I didn't want customers to come to the company because of me. And it was a really hard slog, because we needed to give reason for the customers to come to us, and we needed to have a voice, and we were really losing that opportunity. And then one day I had no choice but to be a bit more part of it. But what I've done is really focus on the business not being so much about me. And what you lose with that is authenticity, because you become a brand that has lots of sub-brands within it. So when a client is working client-facing with an account manager, and they're working with them for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, all of a sudden that person's the brand. So that internal marketing and the way that you're training your staff, and the way that, what resources you give your team, and what they communicate and what's their voice to their customer becomes so much more important. And that is the only way to grow a business, is to constantly really empower the team that are client facing, as opposed to saying, well, we have a brand and we have a voice, and yes, we do want to be using that voice, but what happens behind the scenes? We all have different personalities. We have 3 people on this call today, and we're all very different. The audience is very different. And so how do we be able to get across a strong brand to a customer where they're buying the brand and we're actually able to grow? And earlier in my career, I read a book called The Rockefeller's Habit. I'm not sure how many people have actually read that book. And Marketing I followed that model. So work on the business, not in the business. But it's a struggle for every agency, whether you're small or whether you're big. What is your voice? What is your brand story? How are we communicating with customers? And how are we communicating with the rest of the world?
Yeah, that's fantastic. The Rockefeller Habits, I remember, so Vern Harnish, the founder of EO, I spent time with him actually in Barcelona, but he, his Rockefeller Habits 2.0 with scaling companies, it's very, very important that you're working, on your business, right? And how understanding those metrics and putting things, kind of breaking things down so that you can understand the areas that you need to grow. And one of those is acquiring, acquiring customers, but then also retention, right? How do you retain these customers? Because you put all the effort and all the branding and all the money into bringing these customers on, but you have to keep them satisfied. You have to keep them engaged and have them as lifelong customers, as well as people who can word of mouth recommend you testimonial to others, right? So how do you go about making sure that you can retain the customers for a long period of time?
Well, I'll go then. So I think what's really important is communication. And the reality is, when you have many clients, it's hard to communicate at the same level across all your clients. So you need to find tools, and tools come in many shapes and forms. It comes in sessions like today, where you get a voice and you get to talk with your client or within a group that your client is participating in. It also, technology, if you both of, Social Pilot and AirDeck provide technologies that communicate with your customer and keep them nurtured and keep them connected with you. And I know with using AirDeck, I've been able to, you can send a presentation to a customer and if they've interacted with it. So you can actually use that as the trigger to keep your communications rolling and really not drop the ball. And I think that's really important, is any tool, whether it's social media, picking up the phone, speaking at an event, or co-speaking with your customer, or just catching up. And particularly in this current environment, people want connection. Now, connection can be triggered by technology, which helps us better understand our customer. And it can be just, really gut instinct. How often do we need to be talking to our customers, and in what shape and form should we be doing that?
Absolutely. And, Tejas, I did finally get the slide to work here. So talk about these tools that, obviously we have, a lot of your customer, a lot of the audience here is actually from Social Pilot, but maybe, kind of talk to some of the newer audience. What is Social Pilot? How do you help marketing agencies kind of be successful?
Sure. Social Pilot basically is a social media publishing tool. As I mentioned earlier, there are tools built for SMBs and tools built for enterprises. Social Pilot is a tool built for agencies. The challenges that agencies face are slightly different than the ones that enterprises or SMBs face. Challenges like publishing at scale, challenges like creating white label reports, challenges like managing robust workflows. So Social Pilot actually helps agencies kind of do all of this. So be it like publishing across social media, scheduling it for like really a long time in advance, or creating reports and then securing your social media accounts through robust workflows, or white labeling the entire platform for the customers. A lot of agencies kind of resell this platform to their own customers as well. So that's where the white label part comes in handy. Neil Patel actually reviewed us, and he mentioned that this is the tool for agencies. So hey, it's as good as it can get.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And when we talked about engaging, and using the different tools, obviously, with these, I mean, this is a perfect example, right? This is a webinar that we've done jointly together, is really to connect with an audience beyond just your product itself, right? What I talk about in kind of marketing for myself and with companies is, don't sell your product, don't sell your services, right? You're selling what your product and services does for the user or the person who's, acquiring it. And so, I want, part of this is be able to share, how effective these tools can be for you. So that was Social Pilot. I'll kind of share a little bit about AirDeck as well. AirDeck was started by Jason Weaver out of the pandemic, kind of providing a tool that would help teachers and business professionals moving to a remote world to share documents. And so AirDeck is a document narration tracking platform that lets users be able to record audio and video onto these documents and deliver these PDFs or presentations or contracts to your clients by sending an AirDeck. So some of these things for a marketing agency, for example, is your ability to send out a marketing strategy or a pitch, or using your sales to kind of walk through a presentation. Melissa, you had used AirDeck briefly, and I saw some of your AirDecks. What were some of your thoughts on how AirDeck could help marketing agencies?
Well, what I found really unique about AirDeck is the fact that as an agency, we obviously have design people, and we have content people, and you have all these different disciplines within your agency. And so we were able to put up an amazing presentation on AirDeck and make it come to life in a way that we weren't able to do previously. So we put voice over the presentation. This is just an example, but we actually put voice over the presentation, and you can embed video, and you can do all these different great, really cool things. So when you actually send it to the client, they're having a unique experience. They're having an experience that potentially they've not had before, and they've got all the information that they require, but they've also got you explaining it and presenting it. And I think for us, not only were we able to connect with our customer, we were able to understand what was important to them. So what pages, for instance, were they most interested in? We were able to understand if they spent 5 minutes on one page, but only a couple of seconds on another. And it allowed us to really fine tune how we're interacting with that customer, and what are the areas that we need to emphasize. And really, I suppose, analyze why they weren't interested in other pages or other commentary. And so I found it incredibly invaluable. Our clients find it really helpful because they now use it as sales presentations. So if you think about the sales process, and we're all in sales in some shape or form, right? So we all have sales decks of some description. And being able to send those sales decks out and to be able to communicate that saves time. People want things on demand. So whilst we're here, in my case, here at 3:30 a.m. in the morning, but whilst we're here at a set time, people are more demanding the ability to watch things, to experience things in their own time. Their worlds have changed. That your whole work from home experience has really turned everything on its head. And I think from that perspective, any tool that allows you to interact when you want to interact with it. So, in this case, I'm raising capital for my tech company. Being able to send investor decks out and know who's read what is just game changing for me, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you finding it, Tejas? I know that you are a big fan of AirDeck as well. How have you found AirDeck useful in kind of the work that you do?
We use it a lot internally in terms of if there's a product team kind of giving out new product specs to the rest of the company for opinion, etc. We kind of use that internally with narration and reach out what slides we use. Kind of, it's so much better than getting everybody on a meeting or a call and then having everybody block for an hour. This makes it easy. It makes it asynchronous, and it's repeatable as well. So it's been pretty effective for us too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, yeah, this is where my marketing job is real easy, because I bring on, guests like you guys, and you can talk about AirDeck for me, and my job seems a little bit easier from that standpoint. Melissa, you talked about kind of sending out investor decks and pitches. Did you want to talk a little bit about, you've created an incredible tool that is helping to deliver marketing strategies, but could you want to share a little bit about what you're doing there with robotic marketing?
I'd love to. So in my marketing agency, we always start off an engagement with a marketing strategy. And one of the biggest issues that I faced, as we all know, marketers tend to stay in their jobs only a couple of years and then they move on. So, that training process of training someone how to do a marketing strategy really was time intensive, and we had variable results. Like any agency, I think most agency owners can attest to that issue or that challenge that you have with marketing strategies. And just the reality, not every marketer can write a marketing strategy. So with this problem at hand, and it was really affecting my business, I had an opportunity to work with a university to develop the world's first automated AI machine learning technology that writes marketing strategies in minutes rather than weeks and months, which is the case for a lot of people. And if you think about around the world, agencies write marketing strategies, and consulting groups and your big four accounting firms, they all write marketing strategies, and the cost to the customer is so high and the time it takes to put together is so long. And yet we can develop a marketing strategy which is arguably, it's certainly faster, but arguably is smarter than what a human can put together. And that is really unique. And that combination of machine learning and that combination of artificial intelligence, and the fact that it's able to really go into all that data that's out there on your customer and on your competitor, and be able to bring that in and aggregate it and turn it into something meaningful for your company and for your strategy, is really game-changing for our industry. Being able to manage that entire marketing function from strategy onto a dashboard is where we're at right now. And, it is really invaluable because it allows companies to start marketing faster, start implementing campaigns, understanding their competitors and understanding the movements of their competitors. And, for us, developing Robotic Marketer has really not only changed our own business, but it will change our industry in the way that we develop marketing strategies.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And again, I love tools that start to leverage AI and machine learning, because we live in a world today where a lot of what we gain in knowledge, we want to be able to replicate and make it easier for us. And innovation is all about finding new ways of doing old things, right? And for me, when we're talking about writing marketing strategies for companies or working in to deliver some of these things, a lot of the marketers can have worked in marketing departments, or they've been, as a social media marketing manager, content manager. They've been able to provide these tools and services on their own. But all those learnings you've been able to capture into a product that can translate that and push that out. And that's where I think technology, Social Pilot, AirDeck, robotic marketers, these are all tools that we're seeing marketing professionals start to use more and more of, because it makes it easier and simpler, and allows you to focus your time and efforts on acquiring the customers, making sure you take care of the customers, and keeping them as retaining customers for a long time, right? Tejas, did you have any additional thoughts on kind of where these tools can be more effective in retaining customers?
Yeah, so definitely. But one of the questions that I have from one of our agency customers is that using all these tools adds up to their own cost, right? It's a cost of doing business, but it adds up to their own cost. And how do you kind of reflect this in the pricing of the customers? Or if you speak of it generally, when you acquire a new customer, how do you kind of decide what the pricing is for that customer for services? There are agencies of various levels. Some agencies charge $500 per month for the same service that the other agency would charge $5,000 per month. And all of them sell, by the way. It's not that only one kind of services sell. So how does pricing kind of come into play? How is that determined?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I started my first company, and of course I had no idea what it cost to pay for an hour's consulting services. And also I was 25 years of age. Do you discount it because you're 25 years of age and you're not 40 or 50? And instead I just was brave enough to say, well, my figure is $185 per hour. And if I write a press release for you, it's $2,000 or $2,500 for a press release. And people paid it. And I went through, 5 strong years of people paying that. Now, if I could get that type of money for my work today in my agency, I would be so happy. And it's so funny, we're more than 20 years down the track, and we are charging less today than we charged back then because the world's changed. I was in a tech boom in a great sector that people were happy to pay whatever for any service as long as it was a good service. But it's really hard to work out what your price point is. And sometimes, when you're going from a freelancer to owning your own agency, you might be not as brave about increasing your price because you'd always charged a certain hourly rate. And the thing with that is if you're growing and scaling, you can't do that because you will have overheads such as technology, hiring people, taxes, there's, office space, all these things that are costs to the organization, which means that you actually do need to charge more to be able to stay afloat and to stay alive. And so really understanding before you make that step of starting an agency, what price do you need to charge to be able to make a profit? And always as an agency, at least think, 20 to 30%, because, you're a professional services firm, you need to make at least 20 to 30% profit on every hour that you spend. And you also need to take into account that, there's sick days and there's holidays for your staff, and no marketer works a full 8 hour a day. They're working a 6 hour day, and they need really 2 hours to learn new things and to be educated and to attend events like today. So, really getting that price point right at the start, because it's very hard to raise your price. Very, very hard. And, if you really want to grow and you really want to scale, you have to think about these things up front. And make it work. Technology companies obviously are very different in the way that they operate, and there's so many different models you can use. But when you're talking about being an agency, you have to think about who you're going to be and what does that look like and what rate does that deserve to be? What rate should you have for that particular service that you're providing or that solution that you're providing? It's, very different.
Yeah, I think finding that
Jack,
balance. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, how do you think about pricing since you run an agency on the side? I wanted your thoughts as well.
Yeah, it's a great question because I asked it, but I think asking back to me is also very interesting. I have an agency on this side that also helps newspaper publishers across the country, and I developed that business out of a passion to keep journalism alive, right? And so the marketing service I was providing to them was less about making a profit for myself, but being able to provide them with resources that I saw at large digital media companies that these smaller publications just didn't have resources for. But interestingly enough, that turned into a business for me where I set up on a rev share model, right? I said, hey, I'm not going to charge you for these services. My goal is to help you generate more visibility as well as increase your revenues. And we'll do it on a rev share basis. I have a team that kind of handles some of these performance marketing tools and whatnot. But through that, people would say, well, I also need help with this. I need help with that. And so over time, they say, I will pay for these things. Like they were telling me, I will pay to have these services done. So it's a unique approach that I took myself personally, and I'm not recommending to everybody, but for me, I always found passion in certain things that I've done.
Yeah.
And when I've worked at large media companies, we had a ton of resources coming at us and say, hey, you try this tool. Here's this. Yeah. Here's that. Working with smaller publishers, they don't have all these companies coming to them because they have smaller budgets, and so a lot of that's just knowledge and experience. But for me, I've been blessed in my career. So when it comes to pricing, I always look at what services I'm providing that's also beneficial to the customer and builds loyalty and can provide them with the resources and tools they need. In the long run, for me, they've always come back and said, hey, I need these things done. And that's when I bring on other people or connect other resources. And I price it accordingly to make sure that the people that I hire to take on these things are taken care of, as well as the businesses that are using the services.
It also depends on what market you're playing in. So, for instance, if I was a freelancer myself with almost 30 years experience, then obviously my rate would be much higher than somebody potentially that's 21 years of age, just finished college, and is going out on their own. So, there's that experience level that would be very different. The second thing is, who are you working with? If you're working with big corporations, then they're used to paying a higher rate for services, and they are understanding of the fact that there's structures. There's more senior people at the front, and then behind them there's more junior staff members, and that's how the organisation functions. And the systems and processes and technologies that bring it all together. But when you're looking at small business, and marketing, I very much specialises in small business marketing. Even though we do have big global companies, our 80% of our clients is small business. Now, you can't charge them the same rate you're charging a big corporation. They are trying to get their businesses off the ground. They're going through the normal teething issues that any small business faces. They're, even if they've got 10 million in revenue and they're trying to get to 20 million in revenue, it's still, they've got to cut costs here to be able to invest in marketing and invest in people and invest in technologies. And so you have to have a greater understanding of your customer and be able to provide them with a price point that is a win-win for both parties.
Precisely. I think that's the main thing, large clients versus smaller clients. It's a win-win scenario for me. That's why I spend time to understand my clients' needs. I take time to understand what they're looking for, and let them know that the value that I'm providing, is in line with make sure that is in line with what they need. And if they're looking for bigger and more, then yeah, I have other recommendations. Or if they're looking for less, I can introduce some freelancers. But it's really understanding who your customer is and engaging with them so that you can provide them with the best solution that you can, right? So yeah, absolutely. So we have about 15 minutes left in this, and these are the great conversations. I'm enjoying all these things that we're talking about. A couple of questions have actually popped up into the Ask a Question as well. And feel free, if you're in the audience right now, feel free to drop your questions in the Ask a Question or into the chat box. But one of the questions, maybe we'll start with you, Tejas, is what's a good book recommendation that you'd recommend for people who are in marketing?
So this is a very difficult question because marketing is just not one thing, right? It's tons of things. There's brand marketing, there's performance marketing. One of the early books that I read was Positioning. It talks about how you position yourself as a business, how you can differentiate, even if you are in a commoditized market, how do you differentiate yourself as a business? There's soaps, and there's a soap called Dove, for example, right? Because Dove has positioned itself. So Positioning is one book that I like the most. Anybody in marketing should read it. It's a must-have.
That's fantastic.
I definitely will. I think for me, with marketing books, once they hit the shelf, they're old news. And so I find it really hard to pick up a marketing book where I'm actually learning something from it, because we have so much access to data, we have so much access to information online, and so I more read bloggers. So bloggers that are thought leaders, that think about what's next before it actually happens. And I find that that's really helpful. And just from a learning tool perspective, there's lots of great YouTube videos on how to do different areas of marketing and examples and case studies, as well as, marketing professionals and Jeff Bullis and, platforms like that are really valuable for learning how to do different areas of marketing or how to think differently. So I'm more a blog reader than I am a book reader when it comes to marketing. But as an agency owner, one of the biggest issues any agency owner faces is we're thinking about so many things all at once. I mean, everyone can attest to that. There's an issue over here, a client's unhappy, staff members leaving. There's all these things going on and all this noise. And so a really good read for anyone that is an agency owner or even a marketer, because I think we're all renowned for this, is Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And it just teaches us how to departmentalize it, to how to focus on one thing at once. And really cut out all of that noise. And I find that to be my valuable marketing tool.
That's fantastic. I agree with you. I see Mansi also agrees. Blogger, we talk about marketing trends and marketing type of content. Bloggers usually have that, as some of the most recent information you can gain. And I think you're right. There's some of these books, by the time they're published, it's old news. I've seen social media books that have been published, and by the time the book is published, the trends that were there, 6 months or a year ago just don't apply anymore, right? New features have come up. For me, when it comes to books, I like to focus on books that help improve me as far as kind of my focus and things that allow me to run business better or have more perspective on things. And one of those books for me is Edge, Turning Adversity into an Advantage by Laura Huang. She's a Harvard business professor. And it's an incredible book because she talks about her journey of, talking to Elon Musk and, the different things that she's had to overcome in order to get to the results that she, wanted. And so these adversities that we all face, overcoming them is some of the most challenging things that I think a lot of us, whether it be entrepreneurs or marketing agencies or even just business professionals as a whole. So it's a great book that really allows you to see, that you're going to run into these challenges. You're going to face a lot of this adversity, but how you approach it and how you overcome it will kind of set the path for, the success that you'll have in the future. So that's kind of my book recommendation for anybody out there who's might be interested as well. Any other questions? Let's see. I have a question here from, I think this is probably your business partner. What is the frequency of ideal reporting to a client? What kind of metric are you showing to your clients? Let's see. Tejas, is that the question you want to, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's for Melissa. Melissa, to your agency clients, what is the frequency of reporting, and what metrics do you show them? And you can kind of think about this question as new customers where the trust factor is not yet established versus long-time customers. How do you kind of differentiate on reporting for both of them?
Yeah, so I'm a strong believer in systems, processes, and technology. So we used to manually, gather information from Google Analytics and, email marketing and all our different platforms in which we use to really power our marketing performance for our clients. And only recently, Robotic Marketer developed a dashboard. And that dashboard hasn't been released to the market. It will be released in June. and it brings together everything from your social media performance of your competitors. So it analyzes your performance against your competitors. It brings in your email marketing campaigns, what that performance is. It brings in your sales funnel and information from your CRM system. It gives you information on the top blog headings that you should be using in any given day, and who are the influencers on your topic. And really just brings together all the information that we would normally report to a client on a monthly basis. And we're able to easily download that and send it to them in a PDF, or they're able to access that dashboard. But, I think frequency of being able to communicate to your customer before they're asking you what are the results of a campaign, or what are the results of Google ads, or a PR release, is really important. And we found that a huge challenge because, we do monthly reports traditionally, and customers may ring halfway through the month and go, I don't know what's happened to this, or what's the result of that campaign. And I think, to cut the amount of work we were doing from an administrative perspective, what we did was build this dashboard. And that made it easier for us. And it's really important, any dashboard or any access that marketers have to data, to accessing data that's going to be meaningful to their marketing going forward, and also understanding what they've done in the past and how they can change, different tactics to get better results is really important.
Interesting. That sounds so good. I saw a question from Rob on the pricing, and I love the topic personally because, hey, marketers have to make money as well, right? I think Rob is asking that when you start with a small business client, which gradually becomes big because of all the efforts, how do you change pricing without losing the customers? And I think to add to the context, the customer is used to getting the services at let's say $7 a month, right? Now the customer is much bigger. You don't want to upset the customer, but at the same time, you understand the efforts are more. How do you communicate, higher pricing without losing them?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. When you start off with a company and they give you a budget, they say, this is all I have to spend. And, and they're transparent. That is really all they have to spend. As marketers, it's our job to find ways in which to use that money in a way that they're going to get the highest return on investment, so that they're actually building their marketing budget over time because they're getting more sales in, therefore they can feed more money back into marketing. But taking that customer on the journey is the most important thing. So when you're starting an engagement and they have a limited budget, being able to communicate to them that you're on that journey with them. And whilst we're using this budget, we're going to do these things so we have some quick wins, and based on cost and budget and resources, that's going to be most effective. And when that actually works, being able to go back to them and say, well, now we need to reinvest some of that profit that you've achieved from those sales and really build this out and amplify our marketing efforts. For that, it will cost X, Y, Z. As far as hourly rates, it is very hard, and we've experienced this over time where we've, particularly over COVID, where we've dropped our prices for our valued clients so that they can keep on marketing through COVID, even though their businesses may be running as a skeleton. And so, getting that price back up to where it was is a really difficult journey, even if their business is back in shape. It's that mindset. So so I've failed at this, and I've also succeeded at it. So, failing is not communicating enough with your customer the value they're getting, and the fact that you're taking a risk in being able to service them and help them get to that next level. But you will need to charge them, market rates from there on.
Yeah, great question by Rob. Looks like there's another question here for Melissa. For paid marketing, yes, Melissa, you're the guest here. So, for paid marketing, is it easy to prove ROI? There are marketing strategies that take time to show results. How do you manage customer expectations, since marketers and specifically agencies find it very difficult to prove ROI in a short term, especially when you are not just scaling channels, but trying to discover channels that really work? So can you talk a little about the ROI there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, it used to be very hard to show return on investment in marketing. And because of different programs and technologies and social media and website performance, it's so much easier to show a customer, what their return on investment in marketing is. One of the biggest issues marketers have always faced is the CEO coming down on you. If you're working in a marketing department, saying, hey, I don't know whether marketing does anything for us. I think our sales team it's word of mouth and it's their relationships, and that's what gives us sales. But we all know that that's not true. And we all know you can't scale a business just based on a one-to-one relationship. So being able to communicate with your customer return on investment and show them areas that you actually can show them data around the return on investment. And if the marketing department or the marketing agency is running that inside sales model, it's easy to show with the number of leads. At the end of the day, marketing can bring leads to the table, but if the salespeople don't close it, it's on them. And being able to be strong enough to have that conversation that if you've brought 100 leads and the salesperson's only sold 1 or 2 sales, then that's on them, not on actually the marketing team. And having that conversation with whether it's your client or whether it's your CEO or senior management within an organization is really important. But back to where both of you come from in terms of your technology to do show data. So really bringing that data out and making sure you're able to use that in your reporting to your client or use that in your reporting to your senior management is really important. If I can show that I've done a sales deck and as a marketing team member, I've sent that out to 100 companies and 100 companies have opened it, or 90 companies have opened it, and they've spent 10 minutes on it, then what's the follow-up the sales team are doing to that? That's on the sales team once again. Yes, we can put nurturing campaigns in place, and we can once again provide data with open rates and click-throughs, etc. with that. But there is so much access to data. It's like bringing it all in and making sure that you quantify that. Well, if we bring 100 leads to the table, then you should convert 10 sales, and therefore those 10 sales are worth $1 million to the organization. That type of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think quantifying it and setting those clear expectations, excuse me, it can really help set the tone there. Now I need some water. Luckily, we only have about a minute left here. And so I want to take an opportunity to say thank you, Melissa, for joining us. Tejas and I, with our companies have been very excited to have you kind of share your perspective from the marketing agency side and kind of you've worked in such large, Fortune 100 type of companies as well as a lot of SMBs. So your perspective is very helpful, and we thank you so much for joining us on this as well.
Thank you.
And yes, absolutely. And so if anybody else has any additional questions, how can they find you, Melissa?
2 places. Twitter, MarketingEyeAUS is my handle, or just email me at msmith@roboticmarketer.com.
Fantastic. This recording will be available afterwards as well if you want to review any of these things. But thank you again, Tejas, for joining us to co-host this event. And if you need to reach out to any of us at all, feel free to ask your questions in the comments, and we'll make sure to get those things answered. And thank you again, everybody, and for joining the podcast, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks.